It is now recording. So good morning, everyone. My name is Riley Kowaleski, Educational Technology Specialist, if you don't know who I am. And today we're going to be talking about viewing budgets and looking at them in the portal. And this is pretty much just to get you prepared for inputting the budget numbers in December. And we will have separate sessions about that. And there's documentation and all of that fun stuff. I will also be sharing with you guys the Google Drive link to the folder of budget documentation, just so you have all of those things beforehand. You can review them. So we'll go over that as well. So I'm going to share my screen. All right, so now we're looking at my email. So the first thing I want to bring attention to is the Google Drive documentation, and I'll put the link in the chat. I'll send it out in the email at the end of the week, all the things I promised. So I have my budget documentation right here. I'm going to grab the link and send it in the chat, but it essentially has all of the FAQs from the past couple of years, some checklists if you like using checklists. We have the document for entering and reviewing budget requests, which will be important in December. We have today's document as well, and then the budget summary by object number. So a bunch of good things to know. I'll grab that link real quick. It's only for Marywood University people, so you will probably need to log in order to access it. But here is the link. And again, I'll send that out at the end of the week. So if you don't feel like grabbing it now, no worries. So let's hop on over to what we actually want to talk about today, which is looking at the budget in the portal. So you're probably very familiar with the portal, so this isn't news. But if you go to the Marywood homepage and click on MarywoodYou, we're going to get where we want to go. You just sign in with your PC information or the Wi-Fi, Moodle, Brightspace. It's all the same. And then from here, you just click on either faculty and staff or employee. Either one will get you to the same place. So I clicked on employee, and over here in the self-service menu is where the links will actually be to access your budget once mine loads, and I'm hoping it does. But rest assured, it is under here. You will probably see a button for faculty and then a button for employees if you are both roles. And then when you see the employee button, you should be able to click on that and click on financial information. And it would just be really funny if it didn't work this morning. But
it took me a while to get into, Riley, so it might take a minute.
Good, thank you. I will mention while we're waiting for it to find itself, if you don't see the financial information link under employees, you can contact the help desk and they will put it in for you. But if you do not see a budget when we're looking at the financial information links, you should contact fiscal. So it's kind of a little bit of a nuance there. But if you need the link for financial information, you contact the help desk. If you need budget access, you contact fiscal. So you click on financial information, and we'll wait a little bit for it to load again. But I've seen kind of a gambit of the amount of links that show up here. So for some people, it's only maybe 5. For people like me, it's way more than I ever need. And I don't have a budget. I just have like a test budget. So I don't even use most of these things. You may. But what we're going to talk about today is budget selection, budget summary, and budget selection with history. Now the View Projects button, which is also here, goes to the same spot as budget selection with history. So they're all kind of in the same grouping. But we're going to start out with budget selection, which is actually within the portal. So you'll notice that it loads within this page. It doesn't open up a new tab, whereas budget selection with history opens up a fresh window and you still have your portal tab open as well. So within budget selection, once it loads, we'll get a series of fields and they'll all have different labels. So we'll have things like fund, campus, department, object, area, and project. And these kind of correspond to the different sections of your budget number. So that big multi-digit number. Usually I play around the most with the department line and the object line. So in the department line, you can just stick that 6-digit number. So for my purposes, it's 510102. If you have multiple budgets and you just want to see all of them at once, you can just leave all of these fields blank and just make sure you fill out the fiscal year appropriately. So the fiscal year, as we want to look at it, will be the last year of it, if that makes sense. So if we're currently in the 2020-2021 fiscal year, because it ends in July 2021, then we want to be looking at fiscal year 2021. If we want to be looking at last year, which is still available here, we can look at 2020. And it'll become more relevant in budget selection with history because you can go up to 5 years in the past. So you just remember that the number you're looking for is the number of the year the fiscal year ends on. And hopefully that makes sense. It's really repeated multiple times in the document. So if you don't remember, that's totally fine. So like I said, if you have multiple budgets, you can just change the fiscal year appropriately and click submit, and you'll see all of your numbers. So an example of that would be, I only have the one budget, but it's just going to show me everything for that budget. So we have all of our lines, all the way down, all of our totals. And if you notice over here, we have different links under budgeted, requisitioned, encumbered, and actual. And that we can click on any of those that are green. So anything in these 4 columns can be clicked on and drilled into to view vouchers and other reference numbers and things like that. So for example, if I wanted to look at the internal printing charges, I can click on the number under actual so we can see what was actually charged. And sometimes you have to scroll back up if you've been scrolled farther down, but you get all of these different reference numbers, how much each was worth. And if you can click on something, it'll be green. So I can't click on these, but in other line items, I can click through and see the specifics. But pretty much here is a good specific anyway. So that's totally fine. I will mention as you do drill down, it opens up new tabs in this portal page, and you want to make sure that you are under 5 tabs open at a time, because then the portal will just kind of crap out. I haven't actually encountered it, but I know it does happen to other people. So just make sure you're Xing out of the tabs to return back to your previous page instead of clicking around on the tabs. So just make sure you have as few up as possible. But I mean, if you do hit 5, I don't think anything crazy happens. You just might have to log out and log back in. So like I said, the green links you can click on, but this is an example of like your entire budget. So what if you just wanted to look at specific things? So if we go back to the budget selection link here, you can actually search by groupings of objects. So what I mean by that is each object starts with either 51, 52, or 53, and then it has 3 other digits to it. If you wanted to just look at all of your salaries, you would type in 51 here under object and click submit. You may have noticed that the fiscal year carries over. So I had 2021 picked. I don't have to pick it again. It kind of just carries it over. But when you just select 51 or enter it in that field, you should just see all of the salaries. And then if you did the same thing with 52, that would be all of the benefits. And then 53 would be all of your expenses. So if you put in 53 in that object line, you would see all of the expenses for all of your budgets, which is pretty cool. Because I only have one budget, when I typed in 51, it only gave me the salaries for that one budget. But because I didn't specify a budget number, it's only showing me, the one budget. If I had 3 budgets and I typed in 51, it would show me the salaries for all of them, and it would break it up by budget area. So if I had 510102 and then I had 510103, they would be separated right at a line. There would be an obvious break. You'd be able to determine which salaries are part of which budgets. So it's pretty comprehensive. I also wanted to mention that if you wanted to look up specific objects, like if you wanted to really just enter your whole 5 digits, you can do that. And then obviously if you type in your department number, you can just look at things for that department budget. That's particularly useful for those of you who have access to multiple budgets. Make sure you're using your department fields to narrow it down so you're not too overwhelmed with so many numbers. Or if you just want to see everything at once, you can leave the department area blank and just use the objects and kind of go from there. Are there any questions so far?
So all these numbers, is that accessible somewhere? Like object numbers or department numbers?
like to know what they actually are?
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, if you go to budget selection with history, you can find out what that 6-digit department number is pretty quickly. So if you click on that, you know, if it loads quickly enough, that's what makes it quick. But you should be able to see the 6 digits at the top of this budget selection page. Let me reset that. Apply a filter that I don't need. So right here, it'll say right in front of your budget what the number is. So you can hop over to budget selection with history and grab this number. Or if you want, because budget selection with history is the same as budget selection, you could just use this area and just drill down instead of typing in numbers. So it's really up to what you want to use.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions? Okay. So I wanted to mention very quickly before I hop over to the next link, if you do need those object numbers, like you want to know what each one is, I think the quickest way to do that is to just type 53 into the object line right here and click submit, because then it gives you all of those line items for all of your expenses. And that is probably the bulk of what you're looking at for the budget input come December. So we have our object numbers, which are the 5 digits, the penultimate section of your budget number. So if you were really concerned with your internal printing charges, that would be 53004. So you can like write that down so you can look it up later or keep tabs on it. Another one that might be useful is, you know, office supply, that's 53540. So they are always the same, those object numbers. So as long as you have them either written down somewhere or you just memorize them, that's one way to keep them in check. But otherwise, you can just search 53 for all expenses, and then you'll see every single object in that area. And again, 52 is for benefits and 51 is for salary. And that pretty much covers the budget. Now, if you're looking at your links over here on the left, budget summary seems like it would be the summary of your budget, but it is not. If you notice, when we search in budget selection, the tab says budget summary. So whatever we searched last in budget selection is actually what will appear when you click on budget summary. So because I looked up 53 for all of my budgets, when I click on budget summary, it should just show me exactly what I just looked at. It won't be everything in my budget. It's just going to be all of the 53 expenses. So just keep that in mind. If you click budget summary, it won't be your entire budget unless that's the last thing you looked up, and then it's an accurate name for what you're looking at. But otherwise, it's just exactly what you looked up last in budget selection. I also mentioned budget selection with history a little bit. It opens up in a new tab, and it is exactly the same as budget selection and what you're able to look at, but it just kind of looks a little prettier and you can do a little bit more with it. So when you come into budget selection with history, you come over here to your cost centers, and that's the first thing you look at. I'm pretty sure if you clicked on view projects as well, that would bring up the same page, or very close. So budget to actuals, you would click on it, and then you get to the same page. So either way, you'll get there. So when you come in, I have it on graph view right now, but you can also have it on list view. The graph view shows you a visual representation of your financial or fiscal health. So we have a green bar here, which means we have money remaining, which is great. If you look into past years, maybe that's not the case. So you can see easily at a glance how much was spent out of what you actually had budgeted. If you click on the list view, it shows you the exact numbers, the actuals and encumbrances, remaining expenses, the percent spent, and the financial health. So if it's a green check mark, you're good. I'm sure there will be a yellow marker of some point for you know, things that are close to being full in the budget, and then red X, I'm sure, for being over budget. I like the bar graph view though, because it's easier to click around on. There's also this filter button, which you can use the same things you saw in budget selection. So we can search by a specific fund number, which I've never really played around with, a specific department number if you have a bunch, a specific object, and so on and so forth. So you can actually filter down by the specific things, just like we looked at in budget selection. So if I did like 53, I'm getting some weird errors, but you probably won't because you actually have access to your budget. I think this is just a farce for me. So hopefully we'll still be able to click through on things. So I will actually click in onto my little box for my budget, just to show you what it looks like when you click through things. So it will load your cost center, which is just like your listing of all things in your budget, all lines, all items, everything. And it'll show you the same exact things that you saw in budget selection. And notice that it actually did work, the filter that I tried, and it says up here what I actually filtered. So I have filtered by object 53, just like I showed you in budget selection, and you'll notice that only the object numbers 53 show up. So then if I were to go back and get rid of that filter, I would see all of my numbers. So if you want to adjust your filters, you do have to be on this My Cost Centers page. Once you're in the actual budget, like I am right now, you're just kind of looking at whatever you set up in My Cost Centers. So that's why I'm only seeing the 53 objects. But still, it's kind of useful because when we're looking at all of these things, you can click through just like you can in budget selection. So I clicked on Department Office Supply. It's loading the activity, so it'll show me what was charged. And it should have some voucher links that we can click on. And sometimes this page will take a while to load, especially if you have a lot of budgets or if you haven't filtered down by anything and it's trying to load everything at once. So just be a little patient with it, even though I feel like I don't want to be patient with it right now since we're supposed to be training with it. But as you can see here, we have some actuals here, some lines, we have the amounts. You can see an underline under these different vouchers, which means we can click on them. Now, I say you can click on them, but I don't know about you, but I always get this unable to load voucher error. And I'm never sure if that's just me because I don't have access to an actual budget or if that's just the tool in general. But if you do encounter this unable to load voucher error, like you see in the top right, is a way to still view the details of that voucher you were trying to access. And I have the instructions for this in the document that I sent out in the Google Calendar invite, and I'll send out either later today or later in the week. But the way to get around this is to return to the page you were at where you wanted to click on a voucher and take note of these two numbers. So you take note of your department budget number. If you only have one, then don't worry about it. And then this object number. So I'm going to actually highlight it and then copy it just so I don't screw it up. But I know I also want to look at this specific voucher. So also keep in mind which voucher you're wanting to look at. So now I'm going to go back to my previous portal tab because like I mentioned, you can go back to your portal because this budget selection with history opens in a new tab. So if you go back to the portal and click on budget selection yet again, we can actually enter our object number right here in the field. If you want to add your department number, you can also do that. Make sure your fiscal year is the same as the one you were looking at, just to make sure you're looking at the right numbers, and then submit. So this will show us that specific object number in that specific department budget, and then it will also show us the different voucher numbers. So we should be able to click through on the vouchers for the specific object through budget selection in the portal. So we'll click on the actual here, and once it loads up, we should see the same listing of vouchers that we saw in budget selection with history. And I'll go between the two tabs just to make sure that they are the same. So we have 5 different ones here. Maybe the first one I want to look at is this one from Amazon. So it looks the same to me, 155142. And if I click on that, it opens up with the details. So I didn't see it in budget selection with history, but I did see it in budget selection. So that is kind of a workaround for that error. Of course, you could always call fiscal, but I'm sure they're very busy around the budget input time. So if you can't get a hold of them, this is a way to work around it yourself. And I think it's just an issue with the portal. I don't think it's anything to do with individual accounts, or maybe it's just me, but I found a way to work around it and hopefully it works for you too. Are there any questions about that roundabout set of instructions?
I'll probably forget, so I'll just email you when it happens.
That's okay.
Can you, out of curiosity, tell us what the 10-01 represents and the -20 at the end? I mean, you told us what the department number and the object number is, but I'm just curious about the other ones.
Yeah, now I am not 100% sure, but I am led to believe, based on deduction, that those first two correspond with 10.01. So when I go back to budget selection and I'm looking at those different breakdowns, I believe that, once I get those fields up again, I believe that fund would be the 10, campus would be 01, department is that middle number here, object is the penultimate one, and I think 20, I'm not sure if it's area or project, but for the most part, the 10 and the 01 stay the same because we're on like this campus. I'm pretty sure the 01 at least stays the same, and I'm pretty sure the 10 does as well. I'm not sure about the 20. I think that also stays the same. It's really just this object number that fluctuates and that you have to keep an eye on, and the department budget if you have multiple ones. But really, these are the two numbers that fluctuate the most. So I would keep an eye on both of those. I don't usually worry about the other ones, but again, I don't have a budget to worry about, so I could be wrong. But that's what I think it is. If anyone has any other info on that, you can let me know. I've actually been curious, but that's what I believe. Are there any other questions?
I think only back to Sue's question, if you do like a budget transfer on that budget transfer sheet, it tells you what each one of those areas is. I don't remember off the top of my head, but it does tell you.
Oh, that's really useful. Okay, thanks. I'll actually write that down so I could include it in future things. So it's on the transfer sheet?
Yes, budget transfer. Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you. Alrighty, so moving right along, on budget selection with history, even though you can't really click through on the vouchers, at least I can't. If you look up here at your little drop down, this is where you go back in time up to 5 years. So we can go to last year, the year before, 2018, 2017, all the way back to 2016. So you can kind of like map your trends of the budget numbers you've requested over the years. There's also this export button where you can download a CSV of the data you're viewing. So that's pretty interesting as well. If you like looking at spreadsheets more than just lines, then that's very useful. If we come back here, all the way back to my cost centers, I just wanted to show you how looking at the past can actually be like a pretty quick thing if you want to just look at an overview. If I clicked on last year's, the financial health bar of this goes up. 2019, maybe we didn't have such a great year. So like you can go through real quick and look at what actually happened, like how much you spent, how much was actually budgeted, so you can kind of get an idea. And then of course you can always click through and view the different elements of that budget and maybe what areas like you overspent on and what can be adjusted. And if you did use a filter like I just did, you can click on the filter button in the My Cost Centers area and just kind of exit out if you no longer want them. You can reset the filters. So if you had a bunch on, you can just get rid of them all and then apply the filters. You always have to click apply even when you delete everything, just so it can figure out what it was doing. So if I click on the filter button again, it goes away, and then I can click on my budget and see every single item that was filtered out from my 53 that I put in the object area. So now I have everything from my 51s all the way down to my 53s. Are there any questions about anything so far? Okay, I'm seeing some chat things. I appreciate the information about the second 2 digits and everything. That's really useful. Awesome. So does anyone have any questions about anything we've talked about so far, or just anything about viewing the budget, anything I could help with? I'm gonna look through my notes real quick to see if I have anything else, but this one's kind of short. This training has always been pretty short because it's just looking at things. You're not necessarily changing any items. That will come in December, and that one's usually about a half hour to 45 minutes, not usually that long. But I believe that's all I have if no one has any questions, but if you do, feel free to speak up, or if you want to set aside a different time of the week, if you just want it to be one-on-one to ask questions, I'm available for that. Just send me an email if you're interested. But if no one has any other questions, then I guess that's it. So I will stop the recording.